When it comes to working at a Ford dealership on light duty diesels, there are jobs that are good and jobs that are not so good. This will be one of those. It's a 2010 F550 with a 6.4 liter diesel engine that needs an oil cooler. This is further compounded by a shop that's not equipped to work on this truck. I've got this little tiny lift here to lift the cab with. Alright, and it's got a boom on it. It's an electrical truck, and it's got a jib assembly on the boom that can handle about 1,000 pounds of weight to help pick up transformers and things like that. So this side of the building, nice and tall, can drive the truck straight into the lift. However, to get the cab off, the back of the truck would hang out the door and you wouldn't be able to shut the door. So then you can, alright, we'll drive straight through this door, but this side of the building's too low and the boom would hit in its travel position. So the next option is to back the truck in this door. Alright, as I was saying, back all the way in this door, back around this lift, bypass all that stuff, back over that lift, do a 48-point turn to get it positioned on this lift. Now we can get the cab up in the air. And then I had to modify the lift. These lift arms, this is the worst lift I've ever seen in my entire life. Real heap of crap. The lift arms, instead of having an unboltable stop, they've got a welded bar on there, and I had to grind that out so I can get the lift arm out because it stuck out so far. Couldn't get it to go by the tire. I'm very limited on how I can get this thing in here. As you can see, the boom, it's right up into the insulation of the roof, and it's also almost touching the bar for the lift. There are a couple of options to get this oil cooler out. You can either not take the cab off at all, and you can just deal with the hardest part of the whole job is getting the exhaust off the turbo, because you got to take the turbo off because the oil cooler is buried under the intake manifold and the turbo pedestal. As you can see, it's rather difficult to get to the exhaust back in there. So that's why we take the cabs off these trucks, make it a little easier. Alright, so you could deal with all that, which makes for a long, frustrating day. Or you can take the cab completely off, which we've got the boom out of the way. Luckily this truck runs. The boom's completely out of the way and I could lift the cab. However, there's an extraordinary amount of wiring going from the cab to the chassis, making it very difficult to get out of there. So this is the circuit board around the PTO and the boom, and that's the whole mess of wiring there. Just a nightmare. It'd be a whole job in itself, and then there's an inverter over there going to the battery under the hood to undo all that stuff. Luckily, there's a good run of wire from the floorboard to the unit looped around right there. So I'm going to be able to do a partial cab lift, and I'll just simply lift the cab up, and then you have this light assembly that's going to hit the cab anyway. You'd have to move the chassis back and forth as you lift the cab. So I'm going to do what they call a partial cab lift, and then I'll be able to crawl through the fender well under here and get to the exhaust. Now with that said, normally with the cab up in the air, all this front end stuff would be up in the air, and I could get right to the fan. The fan and stator and power steering pump have to come off to get out of the way to get under the intake. However, with a partial cab lift, this stuff's going to be completely in the way, so I'm just going to strip the front end off of it as if I was pulling the engine out of the front of the vehicle. And then with the cab up in the air, I'll be able to leave it there, and then I'll just have to step over the front radiator support to get to what I need to do. from the front of the engine. The other option is to remove the transmission, and I could put it on this lift and take the transmission out, and then I could reach the back of the exhaust from underneath. However, it's got a transmission driven PTO, and that in itself is a whole nother level of frustration. Plus I would have to take the transmission out from under the lift and get it out of the way so I can bring the lift down, and then you're working another half a foot off the ground to reach the hood, which is just not worth it. And so that puts us back to the best option in this case is partial cab lift. So this is just a smartphone I'm filming with, and it's not the best in the world for showing what I'm doing, so I'll get this thing stripped off and up in the air, and then we'll take another snapshot.